We are going to Pittsburgh, the black and yellow. So a lot of storylines coming from the Steelers this year. Last year, they 10-7. You've got Mike Tomlin at the helm, just got extended. They made the wild card last year, but they lost to the Bills. It was honestly, I have good friends that are Pittsburgh fans, and they're like, just put us out of our misery. Like, we don't even want to go to the playoffs. Like, they're hanging on to that Mike Tomlin 500 record, make sure that they don't lose that. But I don't know. Like, they definitely struggling on offense. Najee Harris, I'm not a believer in Najee Harris personally. But I think Jaylen Warren is a animal. I think he should be getting all the snaps, but for whatever reason he's not. So you've got the quarterback situation funded by the Broncos.
That is it. That is the biggest thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The defense is unbelievable. We don't even have to talk about the defense. I know Cam Hayward's pissed about his contract right now. So can they get him back in here? But everything starts and ends with the quarterback position. It's the NFL. We all know how it goes. Your leader, Mike Tomlin, is there a better coach in the NFL? Maybe Shanahan out in San Francisco. You have to love Mike Tomlin year in, year out, always going 500, always having his flowers. We love Mike Tomlin. He is an unbelievable coach. Last year, 10-7, made the wild card, lost to the Bills. No one thought they would be there. Points forward, they were 28th in the league last year, averaging 17.9. They were 6th on defense. The defense has always been good. The defense was keeping them in games. They go out this year. They let Kenny Pickett walk. They let Mason Rudolph walk. Deontay Johnson leaves. Patrick Peterson leaves. Mason Cole, their starting center, leaves. I love everything the Pittsburgh Steelers did in free agency and the draft. The draft actually more so than free agency. They go out and get Mr. Unlimited, Russell Wilson. They go out and trade for Justin Fields. They got Russell Wilson for pennies on the dollar, first off. The Denver Broncos are paying like $60 million for Russ not to be in their locker room, which says something. That does say something. How would you feel if the team that you were on paid you $60 million to walk away and leave?
I still don't know. Like, they had to, apparently, but like, and maybe it's the coaching thing, or I don't know, man. Like, but Russ has a lot of, like, you talk about the Deshaun situation, right? And feeling the pressure. Russ is like, basically took like a veteran minimum salary, right? Because he wanted them to stack everything else up and build around him. So,
no one else was going to pay Russ. So Russ was getting basically, I mean, maybe he would have got a few dollars more somewhere else. I know he visited the Giants actually, but I don't think anyone was going to offer Russ more than vet minimum. It's not like Russ did the Steelers a favor. I think it was more the Steelers did Russ a favor.
So how do you think this is going to shape up with the offensive coordinator situation? Because you had Arthur Smith coming from Atlanta, right, who just did an abysmal job in Atlanta compared to, how good of a defense they pretty much wasted. Arthur Smith was known to like not give Bijan Robinson the ball much, which is that like, how is that going to factor in here with the Steelers and Najee and Jaylen Warren? Jaylen Warren is like, I can't say enough good things about the guy, like just hard-nosed ball player. So with Arthur Smith coming in, to support Mike Tomlin on the offensive side of the ball, how do you feel about that move?
Arthur Smith has been around for quarterback career revivals. He was in Tennessee before going to Atlanta, helping Ryan Tannehill revive his career. What did he specifically do to help him? He helped limit turnovers and not take sacks. What did Russ do last year and previously the year before in Denver? Turnovers and sacks. So if you can limit what Russell Wilson does, the negative plays that he creates, it really helps this defense. We've already known the Pittsburgh Steelers are a defensive team. You look through the names. You bring in Patrick. You bring in Patrick Queen. Joey Porter Jr. took that next step. Micah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith. I mean, the defense is always what is going to take the Steelers where they want to go. It's just, can the offense be less negative for them this year and score a little bit more than 17 points a game? That really starts to change that math equation.
Well, you have George Pickens. Here's where I want to go with the quarterback. You
Scares
have
me.
George Pickens. Yeah, he's a little bit volatile from he's going to pout if he's not getting the ball. How is that going to affect Russ? How is that going to affect? I think they did a really solid job grabbing Justin Fields. Only upside really on that one. But and like you said, with Arthur Smith, maybe that's even better for him. I think Russell Wilson's going to have a short leash. Something that they talked about in Underdog, though, is I think it may have been it was it Gruden? Gruden, maybe Ship AQ, I don't know. But they were talking about how Russell Wilson got this like accurate deep shot. But what we saw in Denver was him getting out of the ball out of his hands quickly, him throwing short. So is that a coaching decision, or is that Russ starting to wane off of his arm and start to hit those short shots and letting the wide receiver do the work?
No, Sean Payton's a dictator out there in Denver. You're going to do it exactly how he wants to do it. Russ likes to take his shots. Russ throws one of the prettiest deep balls. So that
Which
does
then bodes
bode well
for George Pitt.
Yeah, but Pickens still makes me nervous, man. Pickens, ever since he came into the league, it's just been like you never know if he's going to go off on his quarterback or not.
Darnell Washington would be interesting too on the offensive side of the ball. They really only used him to block last year. He barely got any run.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have Pat Freiermuth who is a stud at tight end, and then you look at the offensive line, and this is where they lose Mason Cole, former teammate of mine. Mason's a great player. But they go out and draft Troy Fautanu, who I think is the best, most ready to play tackle out of the group, besides maybe Joe Alt. Him and Joe Alt are 1 and 2. Isaac Samalo, who is a stud, came from Philadelphia, does a lot of great things. This is the question mark. Center, Zach Frazier, who they drafted high. He's probably going to be slotted. Nate Herbig's in there as well. Who knows? James Daniel, they paid previously. And then you have Broderick Jones. Now, they've talked about Broderick going to left tackle, Troy Fautanu playing right tackle. What they did with the offensive line is getting back to Steelers football. That is one of the reasons why I'm a little bit higher on the Steelers than maybe a lot of people are, because of the moves they made. I just need Russell Wilson to go out there and be a game manager. Can he swallow his pride and go out there and be a game manager? Let the defense wreak havoc, run the ball. You've been high on Jaylen Warren. There's no question. I looked up some stats on him. Last year at 149 rush attempts, 61 receptions. He averaged 0.94 fantasy points per attempt. That means he's getting play every time he touches the ball. Najee's slimmed down. They declined his fifth-year option. He's got a chip on his shoulder. These Alabama running backs aren't just some, not just anybody. They're out there. I mean, we just talked about Derrick Henry. Najee Harris can tote the rock. So there will be a good 1-2 punch, which bodes well for both players. The offensive line's better. I really think the Steelers need to rely on that running the ball. You know what the Steelers team reminds me of, Alex? The Seattle Seahawks in 2013 and 2014. Russ, just don't go up there and try to do your own thing. Be a game manager. Hand that ball off. Rely on the run game. Rely on the offensive line. And then let TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith go get after the quarterback. Go get turnovers. We don't have to do anything too crazy. If the defense played like it did last year, letting up 19 points a game, and the offense just goes to 21 points a game, we're winning football games. We're over 500. Mike Tomlin keeps the streak alive. It will be hard in this division, but it's definitely doable.
I don't know. I don't know that I love the defense as much as you do. Like, I don't think they have a ton of great talent in the secondary. You've got Joey Porter Jr. who's solid. He's handsy though. If the Stripes start picking on him, which will be easy to do, he's got hands all over receivers well before the ball even comes near him. So I'll be interested to see if he continues to get away with that type of stuff. That was a trend that I noticed last season. I'm not even trying to hate on him, but those are just the things that you notice, because he's for sure their number one cornerback back there. You've got Minka. He's serviceable, but
serviceable. I think Minka Fitzpatrick's pretty damn good. Not
a ton of depth in their secondary.
Their secondary isn't as good as Patrick Queen. No, just got signed, right? Patrick Patrick Queen, Patrick Peterson. Oh, Patrick Peterson is gone. Yes. Will I say that Pittsburgh Steelers have one of the best secondaries in the division? No, I will not say that. But what they do is they have one of the best players in all of football in TJ Watt, and that makes up for a lot of deficiencies in the secondary. That's where I think the Steelers get by. They went out and drafted this Peyton Willis kid who's going to be a good teamer. They have Cole Holcomb. They just paid Patrick Queen $41 million. So I'm much higher on the Steelers defense than you are. They just always make plays. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, they're just synonymous with making plays on defense. And they did it last year with this exact same defensive front.
Yeah, I have a lot of love for their trench guys. Larry Ogunjobi, I think, is really underrated as far as what he's been able to do in the league. Like, just really solid guy on the defensive front. Cam Hayward obviously speaks for himself. Alex Highsmith, I think, is taking advantage of his time playing paired with TJ Watt. I think he's been fine for them. TJ Watt, though, here's the $1 million question. TJ Watt or Myles Garrett if you're picking defensive leaders out of the AFC North?
Leaders in the locker room. Like, Myles Garrett's a pretty strange cat. He's like into all sorts of weird stuff. I don't know how much he loves football, but I think he was put on earth to be a defensive end. So, like, pure, just on the field playing football, dominating Myles Garrett all day long. But leader, Steelers have some leaders on that D line. I mean, I might take Watt over him in leadership and Cam Hayward in leadership. Rally the troops, get team playing more like a team, not just like one-offs.
Sure. Interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that they did a good job in free agency, like you mentioned. They definitely had some focus on the trenches. Roman Wilson, I think, could be good for them. He's got good hands, nice, speedy little guy out of the third round. And like you said, Peyton Wilson. A lot of people are high on him.
Well, he had been unbelievable. I don't think he has any ACLs. Something crazy about that. I think Peyton Hillis is playing without ACLs, and everyone's like, how long can this guy hold on? He would have been a first-round pick if he had a couple ACLs, roaming around in his knee joints.
I'm laughing. You just said Peyton Hillis, not Peyton Wilson.
Oh, Peyton Hillis. Shout out. You know what? We're going to do a quick shout out to Peyton Hillis. I don't know if anyone's heard the story on Peyton Hillis. Sorry, Peyton Wilson. We'll get back to you. We're going to shine on Peyton Hillis right now. Peyton Hillis saved his kids in a rip current down in Florida, almost died, came back to life, modern day Superman. So we're going to do a quick, this has nothing to do with Peyton Hillis, former teammate of mine, former cover of Madden, Cleveland Brown great. Shout out to Peyton Hillis. Back to the episode. Peyton Wilson was, ranked as one of the best linebackers, but I think he's missing some ACLs.
So we did, to like shift in some of these question marks for the Steelers. We did talk about Najee, Jaylen Warren. I like Jaylen Warren more than Najee. How do you feel about that whole contract business of ball situation where they're declining Najee's fifth year and potentially letting him walk then after the season?
I probably, unless I know I'm getting Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey, taking a running back in the first round. I just think you can get guys of value like Jaylen Warren. I've been on teams where you don't have to take a running back in the first round. So I probably wouldn't have put myself in the situation to have to pay a guy that much. And for the production, I don't know what his number would be. It'd be close to $10 million next year, maybe between $8 and $10 million. I just don't see the value there. I do love the 1-2 punch. I love having that ability. I think you look at some of the great teams throughout the course of history, they've had a 1-2 punch. You're not always going to have your stud running back because there are injuries at that position. So having two guys that can play is very important. We touched on the O-line. We touched on the receiver room. One thing that we didn't touch on, and you've alluded to this with talking about the defense, the depth. Even the depth of the defensive line. If TJ Watt, for whatever reason, or Cam Hayward, they're getting a little bit older. They're not spring chickens anymore. If they go down, it's looking a little thin there on the depth charts right now. You have Jeremiah Moon, you have Loudermilk, you have Montrevious Adams, Dean Lowry. I mean, like, that isn't Alex Highsmith. That isn't Cam Haywood. That is Nick Herbig. He's been a good player, but those aren't those studs that they have on the starting front. So that's where the drop-off may occur.
And weirdly enough, they have some weird juju magic going on in Pittsburgh that it never seems to matter. It's not like they're playing with fire all the time as far as depth goes, but they just have that like play like a Steeler mentality where for whatever reason they can just throw some guy that you've never heard of in there and he'll hang with the rest of the squad. So I don't know how that translates necessarily at scale.
There's like a Steel City factor is what you're saying. It's like you just are breathing that steel coal mine air and you just get better.
Rent and beer. Yeah, they drink beer on the sidelines over there.
Tremonti brothers smoke cigarettes. That is how I envision Steeler players.
Yeah. And Renegade turns on and they're off to the races. So
one of the best. Sorry, I always cut you off, Alex, but you dropped some gold mines. I didn't even think about that. Start of the fourth quarter when Renegade comes on, everything blacks out. I've played there. I've seen it. One of the coolest in-stadium experiences. So Pittsburgh, the aura of Pittsburgh we love. I think Pittsburgh in terms of a football town, I would rank, this is going to be controversial, I would rank the Pittsburgh Steelers in the top 3. I mean, number 1 in the AFC North in terms of fan experience at a game. And that's saying something because the Ravens are insane. The Browns are insane. Bengals are 4th. I think I would go Steelers 1, Browns 2, Ravens 3, Bengals 4 in terms of fan experience, history, all of those things combined.
I think history, you're right. The Bengals have been showing out on their like Thursday night footballs, and I've been to a couple of those games. The one against the Dolphins, obviously that one against the Bills was a little scary there, but I think that's an accurate depiction of essential fandom game day experience within the walls of the stadium. I'm biased, of course. I think the Browns, we'll need to show you those pictures of the Muni lot in Cleveland for what those tailgates look like. But at the end of the day, the Steelers always tend to hang. None of it ever makes sense. Yeah. I think we'll really need to watch the offensive situation with the quarterbacks over the course of the summer into training camp, because Russ is going to have a short leash. You know, they're not going to want to mess around with him too much because of his age, because of the contract situation. They're not paying him anything, so they're not on the hook for much. You've got Justin Fields waiting in the wings, who's still a young guy, has shown plenty of optimism as far as what his career could be. He's a dual threat quarterback. He can use his legs. He can still sling it. He hangs with some of the best. It's just the right grooming, and maybe Arthur Smith is the guy for that. So you've got the Steelers coming in with the 3rd strength of schedule this year. They're kicking off.
That is the issue. Season. That's going to be a big issue. They have a tough. We looked at the Bengals. I think you could have interchanged the Steelers and the Bengals. Bengals are definitely more talented. Don't get me wrong. They have the guy at quarterback, but the opponents matter. The opponents matter a lot. Bengals have like the 16th middle of the pack strength of schedule. Steelers have the 3rd. This is what does the Steelers in at the end of the day. But
okay, so we talk about here. Let me go on this little side rant here. We talk about strength of schedule like it's this like super concrete statistic, but then we sit in these conversations and we talk about how like, oh, the Ravens just lost all of these players on defense and offense and whatever. Yeah. And we start selling stock. So how much weight does this even carry from last year's record when we're not even talking about the same teams anymore?
That is a great point. Is strength of schedule just bullshit? Should we even talk about strength of schedule? Okay. Strength of schedule, bullshit. We're canceling it. It's done.
It's canceled.
Alex Youngberg has just canceled strength of schedule. Done deal.
I just think it's like a weird, like we try to have our cake and eat it too with that statistic. And I think the home and away games matter just as much. Like we talked about the Browns. Yeah. We always talk about the Browns because I'm here. But we talked about the Browns and how almost all of their difficult games are at home. And that home field advantage matters, especially when it comes to some of even the primetime games. And I couldn't have chose a better first game of the season than to have Dallas at home. Try to catch them on their heels. You've got obviously great players on that squad. So like, let's really look into the Steelers schedule and pay attention to the details of these things. So that way we're not just handing out wins and losses based off of, team A versus team B. Let's look at their their rosters changes from last year to this year. Let's throw out and cancel strength of schedule, and let's look to see how things like their bye weeks, potential rest, all that stuff plays into the wins and losses.
This is a juicy schedule. This is a very juicy schedule. We start out at the Falcons, Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles, Michael Penix Jr., all the drama. I think the Falcons are a good team. They got a lot of talent. I think the Steelers lose week 1 at the Falcons. Week two
at the Broncos.
At the Broncos, at Elevation. It's going to be a drama-filled game. Russell Wilson coming home. The Steelers are going to play up for their boy. Players always come to bat for their teammates. The Steelers are going to beat the Broncos' ass in week 2. Come home, we have the Chargers. It's easier to go west to east than it is going east to west. So you wanted some dirt there. It's tough for the Chargers to come out to Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh ends up pulling off the win in week 3 versus the Chargers at the Colts. The Colts are a team I'm very high on this year. Anthony Richardson coming back healthy. Shane Steichen, one of the best offensive minds in football. Jonathan Taylor, no contract disputes this year. Michael Pittman Jr. they signed. We'll get to the Colts eventually, but I think the Colts beat the Steelers in Indy. Cowboys beat the Steelers for a few reasons. It's going to be a primetime game. The Cowboys always play well in primetime. Do they?
It's in Dallas.
It's in Dallas. It's in Jerry's world. They're great at home. It's a game. It's early in the season. The Cowboys always play great early in the season. They start to falter in the playoffs towards the end. So that first primetime game, the Steelers on primetime, they catch the L in that one. Then they travel on the road to the Raiders. They will win against the Raiders.
So you have the Raiders getting swept by the AFC North, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think the Raiders have won.
I'm not high on the Raiders.
Is it the coaching?
I love Antonio Pierce. They don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
When you got to go against an AFC North and those D lines and you don't have a quarterback, I haven't dove into the Raiders too much just yet, but I don't know. I'm trying to think who's on the offensive line besides like the left tackle. They got Brock Bowers. They have Devontae Adams. They have Jacoby Myers. They got Michael Mayer. I have to look at the offensive line. Max Crosby's a dog. I mean, look, the Raiders are a few years away. They don't have a quarterback. They're going to either trot out Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. I just don't see them being competitive.
We're sitting here talking about the defense, though, and the defensive line for the Steelers, and then, the offensive line for the Steelers, and then you've got Christian Wilkins going to the Raiders. You got Max Crosby going to the Raiders. Even John Jenkins can hang inside that defensive line. He's like a 12-year vet, and he's still kicking. I don't know. Who else is on that defensive line?
Steelers beat the Raiders, all right? Steelers beat the Raiders. We'll get to the Raiders. We don't got time to talk about the Raiders all day long.
Okay, keep moving.
Shout out to Antonio Pierce, though. He is a leader of men. I just don't think they don't have it all just yet. Jets, Steelers lose to the Jets. Steelers lose to my Giants. Primetime, back-to-back weeks. It just starts to wane on you. They got 3 primetime games in 4 weeks, and then they go into the bye. This is where everyone's talking about, could Justin Fields be the starter? Great bye, middle of the week. But look what they do coming out of that bye. Look at the gauntlet of games they have coming out of the bye.
This is where they slip up.
This is what kills a team. We've talked about strength of schedule, but they better come out firing early on. If I'm wrong and they come out firing, beat the Falcons, beat the Colts, beat the Jets or Giants, that's their only chance they have, because no one has a harder schedule post bye than the Steelers. Now they get an easier one right off the bat. They get the Commanders. They will beat the Commanders. All right, now we get to week 11, and this is one of those ones where you come off the Commanders, you beat them, you're riding high. The Ravens are asleep at the wheel. We mentioned that. You get a win against the Ravens. This is huge. Everyone's talking about it right now. Hey, we turned it around. Mike Tomlin's the guru. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 losses. Now you got some wins rolling. Then we got to play the Browns. Thursday night football. Myles Garrett's grabbing helmets, taking people's heads off. Browns just come in and just decapitate, for lack of a better term, the Steelers. Bengals are going to win. Browns again. Browns are going to win again. Eagles Steelers are going to go to Philly and beat the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to have some turnover from last year. There were some internal problems with the Eagles, and you can't just fix those in offseason. You lost Kelsey, you lost Fletcher Cox. So there's some issues there. The Ravens come back and the Steelers lose to the Ravens at the Ravens to end the season, or towards the end of the season, not to end the season. They lose to the Chiefs and they lose to the Bengals to end the season. The Chiefs, just Christmas Day, Netflix, they're going to lose to the Chiefs. And then they're going to lose to the Bengals to end the season. I think I just killed Mike Tomlin's whole deal here. I think, how many losses do we have?
You gave him 11 losses. That's a 6-11 schedule.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got to give him a 6-11. They might go 7-10. With that end of the year, just Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. There is no way they're coming out of that unscathed. They just got absolutely waylaid by the end of the year. Those things are going to snowball on them. And yeah, 6-11. Mike Tomlin, I don't see it. I think you guys are good. Maybe you'll get some. Maybe I should be nicer earlier on. Maybe I should give you I gave you Chargers. I mean, maybe you beat the Cowboys. Maybe you beat the Colts. I'm trying to get you to 7-10. It's a hard division. Steelers fans. I got you going 6-11. We appreciate you.
At the end of the day, 8-9, 9-8 is best case scenario for them. 9-8 would be a big win for the franchise with this, or for the organization with this schedule, and where their offensive firepower sits at right now. And if these losses start stacking, you're going to start to be leaking oil in other places. We talked about the whole wide receiver situation with George Pickens and how he's going to feel about the frustration of the losses. And then you've got Cam Hayward who's like already, talking before the season even starts from the contract perspective. Like, is he going to be checked out early?
Najee, no 5th-year option.
Is he going to be checked out early? Then, we haven't even talked about it at the point that it becomes mathematically impossible to sustain that 500 record. So at that point, it's just going to be like, whatever. But, you'll have Mike Tomlin at the forefront of it. If anyone can right the ship, I think it could be him.
Yeah.
But you got a lot of young talent on here. I think the Steelers are due for something like this. But again, you got that Steeler magic where sometimes they just figure things out. And
the Steelers also have gotten fortunate. Sense. There's been some injuries in the division. The Browns had some injuries a couple of years ago. Bengals had injuries last year. They've always been the benefit of someone else in the AFC North having some issues on their team, which could happen. But we're doing this if every team is healthy, how we see them going into the season. Injuries change a lot. But we're sorry, Pittsburgh. We love your atmosphere. We love your renegade. We love all of those things. We just week 11 on, you guys have a gauntlet, and I just don't see how you survive. Sorry,
so
AQ Shipley.
The AFC sending in 3 teams to the playoffs, in your opinion?
3 teams. Yep, all 3 teams get in. I don't want to play any of these AFC North teams in the playoffs either.
Any of these 3 teams, Ravens, Bengals, Browns, I think can win the division, AFC North, let alone the full AFC, and go to the Super Bowl. So you have to really start to break this down, right? Let's just do like a short, well-rounded recap on the AFC. You've got the Browns have roster in their favor. You've got the Ravens and Bengals who have quarterbacks that you win because of, You've got, between the Browns and Ravens have pretty similar strength of schedule.
We don't talk about strength of schedule.
Well, I'm talking about, again, still let's call it the new age strength of schedule, right? But then these question marks for each team, right? The Bengals' depth, and obviously their O-line is going to be a question because they've supposedly fixed it for like the last 4 or 5 years. The Browns the question marks with Deshaun and Nick Chubb, and obviously the whole offensive coordinator situation. The Ravens, you have a lot of turnover there, a lot of departures on that defense, a lot of departures on the offset, even on in the running back room, mostly for the offensive side of the ball. So it's just going to be smash mouth, hard nosed football between these teams. And I'm just saying this is all going to come down to injury. The healthiest team at the end of the season is probably going to be the one that is on top of the AFC North.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some other good teams out there. You got to look at the Jets. I think the Dolphins are going to be a force this year. I think Browns, I predicted an underdog. I think the Browns are going to come out of the AFC North, even like they're going to go the furthest in the playoffs next year. I'm not as high on Houston. Obviously, I think that they have a lot to prove. I think the Colts are going to be a lot better. But like, you got to look at the Jets with Rodgers there. They're a force. The Dolphins. And then you have the Bills. What are the Bills going to bring to the table? And then you have the Chiefs. Until you beat the Chiefs, I'm not picking anybody to do it. But here's a question. Do we think the AFC North beats itself up so much that when they get into the playoffs, they're not going to have it?
I was thinking about a version of that point where it's like, if for some reason the Browns do win the AFC North, I actually don't like their chances as much in the playoffs, going further in the playoffs. Like, that defense is really where we're going to park our car, hang our hat, and hopefully that they're the ones that, like you said, Deshaun only has to be 75% of what he was in Houston in order to get by. And then you got to hope in the playoffs that he just is win because of type of situation. And then they kick it up a notch and go to a new higher level. But the Bengals have continuity on the offensive side of the ball. Their third wide receiver position, I think, is a little bit shaky, but you've got like Trent Irwin, guys that have filled in there and done fine for them before. The defense, with the Bengals is going to be a question mark. I don't know.
Well, we have it. We got Browns, we got Ravens, we got Bengals, we got Steelers. That is the net worth, the Athlete Podcast Network prediction for the AFC North. Alex, anything else to wrap this up? Because we know we got to hop. We don't want these things going too long.
Go Browns.
Go Browns. Yeah, I could expect nothing less. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. If you guys like these little mini series that we've been doing, breaking down the conferences, we're going to do it next with the NFC East, a conference I know very well. Somehow Alex will plug the Browns. We will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.